everything that we do, we want to do well, we have to be intentional about it. We can't just be floating through life. Just gonna eat whatever I want all the time. No regard for whether it impacts my health or not. Like, do people do that? Yes, but then there are consequences, right? So if we have to do that in our health, we have to do that with our behavior and our words and our mindset, everything. We should try to live a life intentionally in all aspects as much as we can. You can't address what you don't acknowledge. So if we're not even thinking that way, you're not going to think about how to optimize something you don't even consider a problem or not your problem. How do you make people care, right? Because this is supposed to be like health care, and care is in healthcare, but I find we're having a caring problem. Like, we have people that don't care, and I feel like that's the challenge. Like, how do we make these things that should be relatable to all of us? Because even if we're not the mom, we know someone who's had a baby, having a baby, right? How can we make this relatable so we feel the experience? It's kind of like seeing someone hungry and needing food, right? Or shelter, needing home. Like, we're all having these experiences that matter to us. We need to create a system or a policy of having like lactation on hand all the time. It almost becomes like because your baby wasn't born at this time of the day on this day of the week, you don't get no lactation help. And it's like, how is that fair? Like, anytime that anybody's having a baby and all around through the hospital, we need to have lactation 24/7. Like, we have everybody else 24/7. Like, because they're feeding all the time. Like, we wouldn't tell a family, "Oh, sorry, we don't have the pump machine from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. so your baby can't get the tube feeding." No, we wouldn't do that. So why do we do that to people with breastfeeding? It's still feeding too. It's like, needs to be respected just as much. And yes, we do have things to do. And yes, there is a lot of documentation, but it doesn't exclude our behavior and our language and our compassion. All of it can happen, because I'm compassionate and I chart.
What happens after the NICU discharge? Who helps families carry the weight of trauma, fragile healing, and sleepless nights? Most systems don't. They discharge, they move on, but Dr. Jess Daigle refuses to. A former NICU medical director, a board certified pediatrician, and a NICU mom who's lived it. Now she's building what healthcare never designed: post NICU care that treats social risk like clinical risk, wraparound support that heals the family as much as the baby. And in this episode, we talk about why the Alive at Discharge metric is failing us, the strategy behind trauma-informed care, and why investing early in families is the highest ROI play we're missing. If you care about outcomes, equity, and what real transformation looks like from the inside out, this conversation is for you. What's the biggest misconception that the medical community has about maternal health?
I think the biggest misconception is they think that it's just a moment in time. I think that what I've come to understand is that this is like an experience. This is a layered thing. So from the first point of time that a mom finds out that she is pregnant, the journey really begins then, because then there's the medical part of making sure you and the baby are faring well medically. But then there's the social piece. There's whatever life you've been living prior to this moment is still important, and sometimes can be feel even much more stressful because of it. Because if you were facing things like housing insecurity, food insecurity, financial insecurity, those things become more layered now that you're bringing a child into it. And so I've written this on LinkedIn, is that I think the support needs to start prenatally or perinatally, whichever natally you want to use, and extend into postpartum. Like, soon as they find out they're pregnant, there needs to be a team of people that wraps around that family. They need a social work consult probably at that moment. Like, where are you finding yourself now in this moment, financially, housing, food? Can we optimize that? Their education about what they might need during that time period, talking to lactation, talking to therapy, really building the support system then, because by the time we're postpartum, we've missed the whole period, right? The whole pregnancy, things have been changing and it's been building up. There's been stressors then. There's stress then. If they had challenges with their mental health, then those are things that are obvious then. Are we optimizing then, not instead of just waiting until now they've had the baby and now everybody's so concerned? But there was evidence all along that this family needed help, needed direction, needed a community. So I think that we just need to do better in creating this wraparound um, experience. Like it needs to be a continuum, not like, oh, now it matters. It's always mattered. The family dynamic always matters. Everything is, the experiences are building upon each other. They're not compartmentalized like we like to make it. So that's what I would say.
Why do you think the medical system has a hard time capturing who needs help and intervening early on, like you said?
I think you can't address what you don't acknowledge. So if we're not even, just like what I've just even said, if they're not even thinking that way, you're not going to think about how to optimize something you don't even consider a problem or not your problem. I think I wrote a post on LinkedIn one time, or if not, I've wanted to write one that answers the question, how do you make people care? Right? Because this is supposed to be like health care, and care is in healthcare. But I find we're having a caring problem. Like we have people that don't care. And I feel like that's the challenge. Like, how do we make these things that should be relatable to all of us? Because even if we're not the mom, we know someone who's had a baby, having a baby, right? How can we make this relatable so we feel the experience? It's kind of like seeing someone hungry and needing food, right? Or shelter, needing home. Like we're all having these experiences that matter to us. Even if you're not the one directly homeless, you could imagine what that would be like if you didn't have your house to stay in right now. And we need to kind of channel more of that. And so I think that that's where we're failing. We're not tapping into that humanity. We're not taking that step of thinking about what if this were my experience, what would I want that to be like, kind of like that doing to others, like the basic wisdom that our parents used to teach us. It's like we've just like tossed it away. It's like it doesn't matter, like we just don't care about people anymore. And I don't know why that has happened. It's been this like, me, I'm going to get mine, and all about me culture, and it's just gone too far. Like it's gone too far. So I think we really just have to start holding, I think there's issue with accountability as well, and I have mentioned that, right? There are some things we're just not going to see because people are holding people accountable for it, and we've lacked the accountability in this space that we need.
Um, when I worked OBGYN as a social worker, that is something that I often saw a lot is kind of, we all have to sort of rush in with those social supports, and it's really the time that we have until they're discharged is so short that you can't do all of the comprehensive set of resources that you need to, and referrals and all that kind of
Yep,
stuff. Um, and so, and even then, it's really only to the extent that the baby is going to be taken care of and looked
yep,
after, which obviously is important. But then we've also have to figure that, there is no well baby without a well caregiver.
I agree.
Have you seen how social supports early on can make or break a successful birth and
Yep.
postpartum
Yeah, I have.
period?
I've seen it through people having access to doulas, and you see it when there's complications, like when they know a baby's going to have something. Oh, mama's going to see maternal fetal medicine. They're already getting appointments with the specialist that they might need to see. Like, so we're capable of doing it. We just focus only on it when it's medical and not like social. So if we take that same approach, and just like if we consider a family high risk socially, like we do in the pregnancy, right? And not in the sense of labeling them like, oh, well, we're trying to say you're going to be a problem, but we're trying to say we know there can be problems that we want to help get ahead of and be of support around. Just like if you know a baby's going to be born with a heart defect or going to need surgery, you're giving advice. You're going to make sure that family's delivering at a place that that facility can handle that situation. Well, why aren't we don't do the same thing when we know like the OBs? And I find this is an interesting dynamic even between me and my colleagues. Like, what is it's even like who's responsible for what? Everybody feels like everything is everybody else's problem. So it's like I'll get a baby, even, and that's even with medical stuff. Sometimes you'll get a family that has something, and then I'll be like, "Did the OB? Well, no, my OB didn't talk to me about it. But why? Because they saw it in you first." And it's like some of it is people don't want to be deemed the bad guy, and some of it is the labeling of social services as being used weaponized. We've weaponized social support. We've made it like if I'm calling social services, it's because I think something's wrong with you in a negative way, like, oh, you're doing drugs or you're doing this, or you're doing that. Not like a, I really want to help you have the support that I think you deserve. See, we've the narrative around social services has not become one of support and I'm here to shore up and public health and like that kind of narrative. It's like a it's just been weaponized. It's like, oh, you're calling DFACs? Like that's how people think. And it's unfortunate because you're like, well, social services is more than protective services, right? But
Yeah.
we're not talking about it like that. We're not presenting it that way because we don't give it to everybody. We use it for the people we just think have a problem, but w- maybe they don't have an issue at this moment. That's just like right now I may not like have be pregnant, but if I know if I get it, I need to go see this OB and I need to know where to go. We need to create social services like that. We need to say, if I'm having these challenges, these are programs and things designed to help me, and there's no shame in that. And so that's so layered. Like we created shame around needing help. There's cultural things around needing help. Oh, I don't want people in my business. And layer that with we've weaponized it. So if I need help, does that mean if I tell them I need help, they're gonna take my baby? And all of those fears is become it's become a fearful thing instead of a I deserve support that's available so I could be and live my best. And I think that that's part of the issue.
Do you think there the stigmatizing of like a help, just we'll say like just in general, social supports, do you think that prevents like it's sort of like one of those everybody wins when those are addressed up front?
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm like, I can't even remember if I answered your question, your last question. I'm sorry because sometimes I just get so passionate talking about it, but I do think that we have to start seeing it as something that should be just part of the process. It's kind of like with breastfeeding. It's like waiting until someone is about to start breastfeeding is too late. I mean, not too late. You can still get education in, but it's more stressful versus like if you start introducing some of these concepts, allowing people the time to process and take one little bit of information as they go along, right? Then it's less overwhelming as being faced with that thing and it's not working as this and that because there's a lot that's not known about breastfeeding and we've painted this picture about what it should look like. Same way with pregnancy. And so when the people's experience is not that, there's shame involved and all the other things that domino effect when it's like, no, we really failed you in a sense because we didn't say, hey, we know the things that you kind of need to know ahead of time to be successful. Kind of like if you didn't know going to have a baby was going to be painful. No, the people would start preparing and asking you, giving you choices and talking to you about epidurals and all breath work and all the other things we have out there. So we just need to do that, put that same effort in, and it's really going to come from us on the doctor side making it a part of our practice. I think like if like the OBs had social service in their scope of their practice, right? Like I think all of it, therapy, like everybody needs, we need like a centers actually, where as soon as you find out you're pregnant, you get a rollout of service options, and that way you know, like, okay, you may not need Christina right now, but she's available, and this is what she offers. So that way, if you run into it, it's not like I don't know where to go, and maybe you've met her and she's had like a early consultation introduction or something, or some kind of way is introduced to you in a non-threatening way, so that way
Mhm.
when you do need it, it's not just out of nowhere, you know what I mean? Like I think we just have to do better at how we present our resources, and then coming from places that we trust. That's why doulas are good, because people have built rapport with people over time, right? Because can you build trust in a short amount of time? Yes, you can. I've managed to do it, because at the end of the day, people do sense authenticity as well. Like, are you really here to help me, or are you just here doing things? People know how to pick that up pretty quickly. But that being said, still relationship matters. So if you build that over time, right? If you know these people are following along with you, like you have a person that's your social worker, just like, I mean, they do it whenever there is a defects case. You have a caseworker. That's that person that's now getting to know you and working. We're doing it, like, right? We're doing all the things. We're just doing it late or after the fact. And it's like, well, they could have personally had their own personal caseworker from the beginning who got to know them and can say, hey, I know the strides this mom has been making, or, she's already said she wants to be in a program when she has to be, whatever, or we already have researched a program she's going to go into when she have the baby to help with her, whatever. And then don't even get me on these drug programs who are supposed to be helping moms get off, but then they're keeping them on all these medications long term, like the Subutex and the Suboxones and the things. Like, it's just a lot. It's a lot, and it just makes me wonder about what are we really trying to do, like, what are we caring about, right?
Right. Yeah. I think that there's something that's kind of counterintuitive about, waiting for after the birth, after,
Yep,
that whole stressful pregnancy, which even if there's nothing else going on, it's stressful.
it is.
Even in the best case
I
scenario, the
mean, nothing
perfect,
going wrong. Yep, it's
even in
stressful.
the best birth case scenario, it's still a traumatic event. There's still medical trauma there.
Yeah,
You haven't slept for 72 hours. Your body just ran a marathon. You're trying to like figure out breastfeeding and
yeah.
other kinds of
All the
things.
emotions that are, and hormones, like, it's a real thing. Like, and people just downplay it as like, oh, it's just whatever.
Well, as a service line, the way that it's sort of structured, it it's like many service lines, it's like processes and check boxes after another. So those things, it's sort of like
Hmm.
those things become more prioritized than
Yeah,
obviously what's happening right in front of your face.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like we become checking boxes and documenting, and like, instead of really looking at our impact. We It's a difference between saying you did something and then saying, but was it meaningful?
Yeah, you're not retaining any information after
Okay, I gave them a
72 hours
paper
of
when they
breastfeeding.
left, but did they understand? Like, did they understand when to bring their baby back to the hospital, even though you gave them a paper that said it? Because, I mean, I'm a doctor and I'm well read, and I didn't read that stuff. Who wants to read when they're going to take a baby home? Nobody. Between feeding, you want to sleep. Can you just give me three things that I need to be concerned about, and then just what to do after that? Just call somebody. You know, it's like I've shortened my discharge home stuff. Like, these four things to be worried about, and everything else you can just call somebody, and then let them help you figure it out. Because it's just too much information. The people, they probably retaining. They say they retain what, about 36% of what you say. So you didn't told them all this stuff. They're gonna take away like two of the things anyway. So let me just tell you the two things that if you ain't even remember nothing else I said, please remember these two things. That's how I am. Like that's my discharge education now.
That reminds me of a post that you wrote. It was one of my favorites. If I'm remembering correctly, please tell the story if I
Okay.
butcher it. But it was something along the lines of a mom that was bleeding
Oh
or
yes.
something to that effect, and
Yes.
yet the pediatrician comes in and just keeps chugging along and
Yeah.
doing what they have to do and like running the machine. And she's sort of lost in between that. You can tell me
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah. So I was actually doing my rounds, like, so when I travel, well, just for people who don't know, like when you work as hospitalist, so many people are working so many days on, and then you trade off and then somebody else is on. So I was coming on and it was someone else that had been working the day before, and I go in to see the baby, and I have my customary spiel. I go in, I say, "Hi, I'm Dr. Daigle. I'm the pediatrician that's going to be taking care of your baby today. What's your baby's name?" I learn. And I say, "Do you have any questions or concerns about your baby today? Any questions, concerns about you?" Because even if I might not be the one to know the answer, I'm willing to go find somebody and say, "Hey," even tell OB, "Hey, this mom was complaining about this or questioning this." Like, I don't want anybody to not feel seen or heard. That's my thing. Like, I want them to know I'm in there with them. So somehow it came out. I think I was asking about who would be the pediatrician to see the baby or something like that, and she's like, "It's definitely not going to be so and so." And I'm real big, as you know, on my posts. I'm real big on, I watch people when they're talking to me. I'm looking at their facial expressions, their body language, and it was communicating to me like she was like upset and like hurt, like she had this was more than just like, "Oh, I just don't like this person's style or something." So I said, "Well, do you mind telling me, what happened or what went on?" Because I was just trying to see if it's something that need to be addressed, right? And she was like, "Well, I'm up in here bleeding out." And then she starts to get like worked up, and the pediatrician comes in, and the OB is even like, "Hey, we need you to leave," like, because they're in the midst of, like, she's hemorrhaging. They're trying to, and she just ignores them and say, "I'm just coming over here to see the baby." Like, and it's like, not probably what, you know? And so then I said, "I'm sorry that happened to you," and she just breaks down, starts crying, and just tells me about. I said, "Have you talked to anybody? Like, have you even talked to the OB about like how you felt about what happened and transpired?" I told her I was glad you're here. I'm glad you're here because she could have died, you know? And I think she just needed to know that somebody recognized how serious that was, like what she went through. Like, it wasn't just oh, and sometimes I talk about that because we can be very like that in medicine because we have seen this so many times. It's like I may have gone to my 100th preemie delivery. Well, actually, thousands at this far. Look, I look young, but I tell people I've been doing this a while. But this is his family's first. This made his family's first experience, and this is what they're dealing with. And so I have an opportunity to be a part of the best part of this memory or the worst. And I don't
Mm.
take that lightly. And I think we do take it lightly because we're just checking boxes and I got to get it done. And yes, we do have things to do. And yes, there is a lot of documentation, but it doesn't exclude our behavior and our language and our compassion. All of it can happen because I know because I'm compassionate and I chart. I don't choose. I don't have to choose, do I be compassionate or do I just chart today? No, I'm gonna be compassionate and I'm gonna chart. And and so I think we just have to start to call it out. And that's why I write the post. So that somebody reads and they think about, yesterday when I went in, I wasn't really that nice to a family. Maybe I can look at how I can do that again. Like, it's designed to help people to start reflecting on their own behavior and like, am I just moving through this work carelessly because I'm
Mm.
checking boxes and trying to chart. And that's when I talk in Nan, I talked about, that's why I gave scenario, not Nan, sorry, for gold just this last month. um well, actually, that was in June. It seemed like that was in June. It's been 2 months already.
It was a long
But
summer.
huh, right? The
It-
summer went by fast. But I talked about that. Like, I gave scenarios like version A, The family comes in and you could just be like, oh, they're fine. Or you can say, hey, Miss Johnson, I'm glad you made it in today. How are things? I'm going to be over there to update you on Jackson in just a second. I'm just finishing up some charting. So you're still finishing up the charting, but you still took 10 seconds to acknowledge someone. And was it a long conversation? No. Like, do you still have to chart? They know you got a chart too. Like, they're not dumb, but you can acknowledge them and say, I see you. And I do recognize that I need to talk to you and that you do have questions about your baby. And I'm just trying to make sure I get this last thing done. But I'm going to be right over there. And people are very willing to wait. I've been in the middle of updating the family, had to cut out to an emergency C-section. And I said, hey, y'all, I'm sorry, but I have to go. I'm being called, but I'm going to circle back. And I circle back. You just have to have integrity and be mindful of your actions and who you are and people. And it's not hard. It just has to be intentional. So that is how that experience went. And then she was like, when she was being discharged, she was like, you was my favorite person this whole hospital stay. And I said, well, thank you. Thank you. I love that. And you know what? And she had moments when she was mad. I had to go in there and tell her some hard stuff. And I would just make it like a joke. I'd be like, look, I told the lab they better have this lab together because my life is on the line if I go in here and tell this mom. And she would laugh because she was serious, like she meant business, right? But I didn't let that impact how I interact with her. I just understood her, right? I understood that she had been through something and she was frustrated. She was trying to get the heck up out this hospital because she has now coupled this with trauma and she's trying to get away. She wants to go home, create new experiences around her baby, right? I've understood all that in just that short encounter, but it did determine how I interacted with her, right? And so I think it's just having that experience and wisdom and compassion, and you build upon it and you get better and better. Was I always as astute? Probably not as much, but I've always been aware. I've always paid attention to other people, been very curious. That part is true. But it's gotten better and better every encounter I have with the family because I see the proof of the things that I speak on every time. It's like, see, that does work. See, that is important. And so then I keep doing the important things.
Anytime that we're in healthcare, we never operate in a silo. We always have to outsource things, rely on our other team members,
Yeah.
work with other partners. How do you, to the extent that you can decide, how do you decide who to partner with?
Yeah. Do you mean like in my work or like in my everyday work or like in business or just both?
In your business.
Okay. Really, it's really like the character. I think you have to look at like, do you have the same sound, so to speak, right? I was actually speaking of, I was just on a podcast recording before this one, like we were talking about, and we were discussing some things, and we realized the how our mindsets about these things are the same. And so I think you have to have conversation with people, and it's proof in what they're saying, but also how they show up, what other people are saying, right? It's just like how I chose my pediatrician. I was working in a hospital with a lot of families, and they kept always naming Dr. Barnwell, Dr. Barnwell. I was like, and then I got on the phone with him to talk to him about somebody, and just the way that he even spoke to me about this patient that he hadn't even seen yet. I was like, man, I just love the questions he was asking. Like he wasn't just like, oh, well, just he was invested already, and he hadn't even had them as a patient yet. So that to me let me know, well, that's who I would want my kids to see then. I mean, and then I heard it from other families like, oh yeah. And so then that let me know two things. It wasn't because I was just a physician, because somebody could write that off and say, oh, well, that's because you're a pediatrician too. Then of course they're gonna be nice to the other doctors, which is not always true actually. Doctors are not always nice to other doctors. Just want to put that out there. But the other thing is that if other people are saying it, so now the proof is in people that's not a pediatrician like him, and they still have the same experience. So that means it doesn't matter to him who you are. It's just that you are. So he is, right? Like, because you are human, that already alone makes you worthy. And so he's going to treat you with respect. And that to me means we think the same way, because that's how I treat people. Like, Okay, yeah, you're gonna get treated the same by me, whether you're the granddaughter of the president of the hospital, because I've had that too. And I've always joked and been like, well, it's a good thing that I'm nice to everybody. Because sometimes I find that out on the back end, like, oh, that was so and so's grandbaby. Like, well, at least they can say I was authentic because I didn't know that ahead of time, you know. But that's what it is. I pick based on what are they saying, what are other people saying about them, and then just my own encounters. I think that's the only way you can, like, just anything else, like word of mouth, and then just seeing the proof is in the pudding, like they say.
Have you well, I think I'm gonna ask you something else. So I guess I'm just sort of branching off of that experience where you had that patient again that was telling you that they had this awful experience with a pediatrician, and
Hmm.
because I think so many times in healthcare what we don't talk about is that um one single person can turn somebody off from the system.
Yeah,
And so you might find yourself like even operating your own role in a different end of the continuum,
yeah,
sort of making up for, that negative experience that had
yeah,
nothing to do with you.
yeah. I think that's just the cost of doing business, like they say. Um, I think that, I think it's hard. And on that previous podcast, we were talking about impact, people needing to do better with understanding the impact of their actions or inaction, their words, all of it. I think it's just getting that message out there consistently and kind of hoping that you're planting seeds that will grow and into change in people. I think that's the best you can do is plant those seeds and address what you can. And I didn't feel any responsibility towards trying to make her feel any different about that other person, even though she's a colleague of mine, actually. And I I like her, but I've come to understand that people can make wrong choices in a moment too, and that's very possible. And I encourage patients to, um, if they are tasked with seeing someone again, to address it, because it could be a teachable moment for them, because they may be operating in their own world in that instance and not really, again, she wasn't, I don't think it was her intent to be careless, but intent does not always equal impact, right? What you intend and the impact may not match, often sometimes don't, and they can go both ways, it can be negative or positive, but we have to keep that in mind. And I think that's why we need to have more dialogue. I tell families if they've had that bad. I actually had a family this past week where I was working that had a really traumatic experience and a lot of hostility between them and staff. And I told the nursing manager, I encouraged her to go talk to them, because I said, you know, they're going to write this up and it's going to be on the thing. And you may not be able to change what they say, or you might be able to actually. They might be able to say, "Hey, I had this experience, but I was able to talk it through with the manager and come to another perspective or conclusion or whatever." Because this work is messy and it's hard and it's so many emotions from everybody. The families are emotional, the teams are emotional. Everybody matters. Everybody matters. But I think we in healthcare bear a larger responsibility in the sense that we're doing it all the time, and so I feel like we should look at it as an advantage and a privilege to say, for one, realize a privilege to help people in a special, often complicated and trying time in their lives. Like, that's amazing to me, actually. But I think we look at it too much with arrogance and ego. Like, you're coming here to have a baby. You should do what we say, what we want. That's how we're trained to look at it in the hospital. And it's like, yeah, we have policies, but one, did we really base them on real people or what we just wanted, right? That's the one question we need to ask. And two, like, it's real people. Like, let's remember that. Like, this people are dynamic. Things are not gonna go exactly like, they're not robots. They're not a computer. We're not putting some input and gonna get the exact same output every time, right? And so we need to hold space for that, and kind of realize that this is a sacred experience for people. We've kind of taken the sacredness out of it and we've just made it like business as usual, which is unfortunate. So we need to do better in that regard. But anyway, she went and talked to him and she told me she was very thankful that I brought it to her attention, because one thing I don't like to assume is that people even know, right? Like, I told the family, your story is worth sharing. Like, if you've had that kind of experience where you don't even want to have another baby again, and you don't even want to come back here, that needs to be discussed. Because can people have a one off? Can you like have one nurse that you like, I don't like her attitude, or I don't know, like everybody, because personalities do clash, that's reality. But if it's like an ongoing thing, like day after day, the whole day, like it was just one thing after the other, that needs to be addressed. We need to treat that just like we do maternal morbidity. If we have a bad outcome, everyone want to go to the table and talk about it and debrief and discuss, and we need to do that when it's social too. Okay, so
Mhm.
okay, the mom and baby leaving alive should not be the only outcome we should hope for. Like, check, they left me
Standard.
alive. Like, we should be hoping that they left like, man, you know what? I felt seen and heard. I feel like people responded to my stress, or they were really trying to make this the best it could be, despite the fact that my baby had to go to the NICU, or despite I had a bleeding thing, or they should be able to say, in spite of, I felt seen and supported in this experience. If they can't leave saying that, even with people having varied, I didn't have people that we didn't always see eye to side, but they've come back and said, even though it was hard, I felt like you were in it with me, right? Like, they should be able to leave saying that. If they can't say that, I think we missed the mark, personally. Whether the mom and the baby left alive or not together, you know what I mean? Like, that should not be our only marker of success. So, yeah,
Definitely. Yeah. I think we kind of get into that mentality where it's sort of like if the worst case scenarios didn't happen, then, we did a good job, as opposed to that being the bare minimum,
yeah,
the standard.
exactly.
It, was there ever a time when just following, well, let me rephrase that. If you were talking to a new clinician who was only taught to do things by the book, to just be very so rigid with those policies and sort of doesn't have the nuance yet, what are some things that you would tell them so that way they're not just checking off boxes?
Yeah. Well, I would first of all be curious about why they became like a clinician to begin with, like whether it be a doctor, a nurse, um, physician assistant, whatever. Like, what was your why for doing this? Like, if you were doing this because you wanted to help people, then you need to keep that in the forefront of your mind. When you are doing whatever you're doing, have some kind of system for yourself for checking, are you helping, right? And understand that sometimes it's going to be putting some things to the side, because I can't say, I don't feel like I've ever compromised any of the clinical care that I needed to give to just be compassionate. Like, but I've also come to realize that, like, policies or guidelines or protocols, especially like policies and protocols or guidelines, like, they've been taken, they're usually established off of some, hopefully some evidence-based thing, and at the end of the day you're trying to prevent a certain outcome. But then you have to keep in the back of your mind that babies and families don't read protocols, they don't read textbooks, right? Like, they're, meaning their life may not match exactly that number or to that extent. So, what are we trying to achieve or accomplish? Let's keep that in mind. So, that's what I would tell them. Like, yes, when you're checking the boxes, still be mindful of the person that you're checking them about. Have some kind of system. And for me, it's just taking time to think about that. Like, when I go to the hospital, I pause and I think, okay, I'm going in here today and I'm going to be taking care of real people that have real problems, and they're going to be often facing these kinds of emotions. And so I get to decide how I show up today, right? And I don't think people do that. If you don't create a system of being mindful, then you won't be mindful. If you don't create a system for self-reflecting, you won't self-reflect. So you just have to say, I'm going to make this part of my practice. Is no different than somebody who decides they're going to work out every day, or somebody who's very intentional about their diet, right? Everything that we do, we want to do well. We have to be intentional about it. We can't just be floating through life. Just going to eat whatever I want all the time, no regard for whether it impacts my health or not. Like, do people do that? Yes, but then there are consequences, right? Like I saw a post recently. One of my friends was posting about a patient of hers who had a high hemoglobin A1C, and it's because she was liking these brownies, and so she brought one for the doctor, and she was like, "Should I eat this brownie if this has been giving her the high A1C?" And everybody was kind of chuckling, but again, is understanding like, well, if she's eating this every day and this high sugar, having diabetes, these are consequences. Like, so if she doesn't take time and say, hey, me eating this brownie like this or keeping my sugar high is causing this consequence. I need to make a change, right? So if we have to do that in our health, we have to do that with our behavior and our words and our mindset, everything. Everything we should try to live a life intentionally in all aspects as much as we can. And not saying I'm still a very spontaneous person, I'm still very fun, but in the things that matter like that, we can't miss it. Like we will miss it just out of human error in general. So that's why it's that much more important to be intentional. It lessens the chance of you missing it as much as if you didn't consider it at all, right?
What's one protocol that you've seen, everywhere that's really common? Um, what's one protocol that you think is overrated, doesn't probably could be clipped out, takes more time than it's worth, and another one that's you think is underrated that people don't pay enough attention to?
I have to think about that. I don't know if I've ever thought about one that's under or overrated. Well, I do think that sometimes the way we do visitation in the NICU, sometimes I think can be a little strict. But I do understand that there are reasons, especially with kids that being in school, childhood illnesses, things like that. But then I always like laugh about that because I'm like, adults carry those same things and they can still be coming in the NICU and visiting. So we need to more so have a policy of if you been sick in the last so many versus how old you are per se. But that's kind of one that I like. Sometimes I'm like, oh, the siblings getting to see their sibling. Like I wish for things like that could be a little bit less or like somehow adjusted to some degree. I'm trying to think of one that I think we could do better with things like skin to skin and even offering like since it's breastfeeding awareness month, like non-nutritive breastfeeding. Like I think we need to create a system or a policy of having like lactation on hand all the time. That would actually be a good one actually because so many people are struggling in with that and it almost becomes like because your baby wasn't born at this time of the day on this day of the week, you don't get no lactation help. And it's like, how is that fair? Like, like anytime anybody's having a baby and all around through the hospital, we need to have lactation 24/7. Like we have everybody else 24/7. Like because they're feeding all the time. Like we wouldn't tell a family, oh sorry, we don't have the pump machine from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. so your baby can't get the tube feeding. No, we wouldn't do that. So why do we do that to people with breastfeeding? It's still feeding too. It's like needs to be respected just as much, right? So we would not have any formula available for nobody in the hospital. So I just think like that's one thing that could be assessed a little bit better, especially for people who really want to give it a shot and don't because they don't have the support. And I'm pro feeding. I will be clear about that and people might come for me on that, but I more so am about like making sure the baby gets what they need, and I recognize there are varied experiences with regard to breastfeeding and breast and baby situations. So I never like to exclude anybody, but at the same time, I do think that that's something that we could do better. It's like better support in that area. So I feel like that's something that could be that's underrated that could have a huge impact actually if properly handled.
Amazing. And I'll end the our session here with just one last question. What's the biggest lesson that you've learned from healthcare entrepreneurship?
It's different because I've had to learn there's a difference between Dr. Jess, the physician, and recognizing a role as like Dr. Jess, like CEO. Like you need to have both in mind. Um, because like there are some things that you have to consider differently than just is than being a physician alone versus like, oh, I now I have to run a business, so there's other things that I have to factor in. I think that that's the hardest piece because I really didn't ever want to like own or have any kind of business. I used to say I'm just gonna go to the hospital and take care of people and go home. But I realized that I was limiting myself in a sense because I was just really mostly afraid of all the different responsibilities that you do have to be mindful of. But what I realized, just like anything else, you get the help you need. Like I'm not doing everybody else's role in the hospital either. Right. When I go there, I'm being the physician. I'm not trying to be all the social work, even though I may have some aspects of things that I do that may be similar to a social worker or maybe similar to a nurse or, whatever. But I do recognize that, well, then we have to delegate, we have to bring other people in. So it's the same way with a business. Like, okay, what do you need? Who's going to be the best for this, outside of you and things like that. So I think that was the lesson that I've still learning actually. But I think that's a key lesson to learn is like understanding the differences between the roles and then being willing to outsource and ask for help in the different things you need to make it successful, just like you would with any other team approach. Hmm.
Great. Thank you so much for your
Thank
leadership
you.
and for talking with us today. A lot of great insights for our
Well,
audience.
thank you. I appreciate you too. And yes, always happy to talk about these things because they matter and people matter. The work we do matters, and I think that's what we need to be reminded of is that it does matter. Like we're not like in the silos, like you said. Everything impacts everything, and when we start to recognize that, then we can do better by people and even in our systems.
Where can we find you?
All right, I'm on LinkedIn at Just Daigle MD, FAAP after that, and then I'm on Instagram at mom and me underscore MD. And I think it's the same. It's just my name on Facebook, Just Daigle as well. So mostly there. TikTok is the at mom and me underscore MD. I mostly use TikTok for a lot of educational videos because a lot of families like to learn a lot about different things that go on with their babies and things like that. So I usually use that one too. If somebody asks me something in the hospital, I'm like, it's probably thousands of other moms that are curious about why their baby does this or so I make a video so that way other people know as well.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll have to do another episode on your
Yes.
social media. And I know it's sticky. That's a sticky one in the medical community. We're always kind of shy about that.
I actually don't mind because I used to be, and then I started seeing so many people really respond positively, actually, to understanding things. And I get teased about it at the hospital when some of my work, oh, she's a TikTok doc. I'm like, I'm not nearly as famous as some of my colleagues, and I'm not even really trying to be. I'm more so, if I could do something that provides peace of mind for a family, that's a win for me. So if they see something in their baby and they're that much more educated or that much more like I know what to do, empowered, then that to me is what I'm aiming for. Like if they can say, I watched that video and now I know like that's not a problem or hey that is a problem. If I see that I know what to do and who I need to go to for help, that's empowering, right? And that's one less stressor. Like, I'm all about the de-stressing of the family life.
Yeah, it's definitely stressful enough. Take care. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much.